Good morning, Nigeria, and welcome to Daybreak on Trust Television. It's a beautiful Tuesday morning here in the nation's capital, and I suppose it's the same wherever you are across the country for some. The heats have continued to rage, and in other places, they've had a fair bit of rainfall, cooling down the pressure across the country. We welcome you to today's show, and we hope to serve you all the best from our lineup this morning. I am Sunday Michael Ogu.
Good morning, Nigerians, and a very beautiful morning to you. Thank you for joining us. My name is Stella Iachi.
Interesting to have a different co-pilot today. Yes. After a while. The country is pushing amidst all of the tension that it was enveloped in after the presidential and governorship elections. Now we are battling to get more cash.
Yes,
the situation is better than last week, but
yes,
the queues are still there.
Better than last week. The queues are still there, and then you begin to wonder, okay, shouldn't the queues be reducing, considering that the banks worked through the weekend, Saturday and Sunday? Yeah,
we get that impression, but it turned out Nigerians, as we are, peculiar people. We now have people who have benefited from the scarcity go line up in the bank trying to mop as much as possible, hoping that somewhere in between we will return to the crunch again.
Sunday, when I was thinking about this yesterday, I thought of something. I said, I hope we don't get back to those old days where people actually put their money under their bed. Because following what has happened in the past 2 months, and when you hear a lot of Nigerians speak, some people are actually scared of taking their monies back to the bank. So when they take it now, it's hard. They're not letting go of that money anymore.
It is hard currency. You know, I'll cite an instance with myself. I've had 5,000 forever. Wherever I go and I get the option of paying with other channels, I would rather pay with those. In fact, incur more cost than part with my hard-earned cash.
So you're holding that 5,000 there.
Interesting. Yeah. There's so much happening around the country, and we'll bring you the highlights from what we have picked this morning. To start with, INEC announced date for Adamawa Kebbi rerun.
Kidnapped FCT chief's wife's son freed after 7 weeks.
And 3 NSCDC officers gunned down in Imo.
Now let's take a look at the details. The Independent National Electoral Commission, INEC, has announced the date for supplementary elections in Kebbi and Adamawa states. Mr. Rotimi Lawrence Oyekomi, the Chief Press Secretary to INEC Chairman Professor Mahmoud Yakubu, disclosed this in Abuja on Monday. He said all outstanding governorship, national state assembly elections would hold on the same day. Daily Trust reports that the February 25th presidential and national assembly elections, as well as the March 18 governorship and state assembly elections, witnessed cancellations and some inconclusive elections across the country.
And moving on, there was tension in the Nkpala area of Imo State on Monday as gunmen killed 3 personnel of the Nigeria Security and Civil Defense Corps. A correspondent gathered that the incident took place at Ekiasu Market in Obiagu community in the Nkpala local government area of the state. A witness who spoke anonymously said the officers were attacked in the early hours of Monday in an ambush while they were in a vehicle. Security operatives have taken over the community and were said to be arresting youths of the community in order to fish out the culprit. Spokesman for the police in the state, ASP Henry Okoye, who confirmed the murder of the 3 NSCDC personnel, said the security operative had moved into the community and normalcy has been restored.
Now, the abducted wife of the traditional ruler of Bokpe in Kwali Area Council of the FCT, Mrs. Sadia Hassan, and her son, Osama Hassan, have regained their freedom after being held captive for 7 weeks by their abductors. City and Crime had reported that bandits on Saturday, February 4, 2023, abducted one of the chief's wives, 2 sons, and 3 other residents of the area from their residences. Confirming the release of the chief's wife and the son through telephone to a report on Sunday, a member of the family, Danjuma Osman, said they were freed on Saturday evening after collecting 2.5 million naira, foodstuff, hard drugs, energy drinks, and wine in a forest in Kogi State. Usman, who noted that the kidnappers refused to release the other son of the chief, Hamisu, and the 2 other victims, said the bandits were demanding another 3 million naira before they would be freed.
Very sad incident there, and watching how gradually the Kogi enclave is becoming
another
a den
hotspot
for kidnappers in Nigeria. Sadly. I hope something happens very fast. And we move on to packages for you this morning. Despite pulling 6,101 votes and winning in 11 states and the Federal Capital Territory during the presidential election, the Labour Party has failed to secure more than one state at the just concluded governorship and state assembly elections. Trust TV Shafiu Suleiman takes a look at the factors that affect the winning trajectory of the new political party now considered the third force in Nigeria.
The Labour Party, LP, has been on the ballot for over 20 years now, fielding candidates as a pro-workers political organization, but without much success. Its presidential candidate, Peter Obi, after being Anambra State Governor for 8 years, had an unprecedented outing at the February 25 election, polling 6,101,533 votes to came third ahead of NNPP's Rabiu Konkoso, who garnered 1,496,687 votes.
Presidential election came with a lot of confirmation of assurance by the Independent Electoral Commission. One, the Independent Electoral Commission promised that results will be pasted and be transmitted directly at the polling units. That gave hope. And then there was serious ways in which the issue of vote buying was kind of blocked in such a way that people would not buy the vote of the electorate.
Peter Obi successfully won 8 senatorial and 34 House of Representatives seats in addition to securing a number of state assembly positions at the just concluded elections. Its winning streak, however, was not sustained at the governorship election, with only Abia State in its kitty.
As of today, the result of the presidential election is yet to be uploaded into the INEC RF server. This now affected seriously because a lot of people now lost trust. The trust that they had before, where a lot of them came from outside this country to come and vote, hoping that their vote will count. So in the governorship election, people now become apprehensive and they did not trust the system anymore.
Though the party's performance at the presidential election was attributed to several factors, pundits say politics of ethnic and religious identity were largely responsible. With supplementary election expected to hold in 46 constituencies earlier declared inconclusive by the Independent National Electoral Commission (INEC), it remains to be seen if Labour Party will consolidate on its electoral winning trajectory. Shafiu Suleiman, Trust TV News, Abuja.
Thank you, Shafiu Suleiman, for that report. Now, the Nigerian media has been commended for displaying high level of professionalism in its coverage of the 2023 general elections. A cross-section of Benue residents made the commendation while appraising media coverage for the elections. Trust TV's Jimmy Azande completes the report.
Long before the commencement of the elections, members of the Fourth Estate of the realm kept their lenses on and their eyes and ears wide open to educate, as well as enlighten members of the public in different languages to enable them perform their civic responsibilities. Those who spoke in Makudi said the organized media performed excellently, according to the guidelines of INEC, as well as ethics of the journalism profession.
They set agenda for political parties and for politicians. So if I can just mention a few, you had some TV stations, for example, that ran situation rooms, following on a minute-by-minute activities across the country and at the, with the INEC. So that was impressive because they brought key political figures to speak on topical issues. They engaged them, they made sure issues that, and there was a lot of investigation to make sure the facts came out on every issue.
The media, they behave according to the ethics of their work. They only report those things they found from INEC. There's no subtraction and there's no addition. The media cooperated in several areas. Even at the collection of state collection of election results for presidential and that of the governorship, the media were with us from the beginning to the end.
The journalists were also commended for their aggressive voter education, which enhanced the smooth process at the polls.
At the polling stations, when people came to cause havoc, they were immediately caught by the camera of the media persons, and then they also engaged citizens. So did you call it citizen journalism or something? So they could get clips from citizens and show. So it was an innovation that was very well used. I think the media did very well.
They have kept a watch on the INEC and the political players to ensure that all of them were playing by the rules. It all started from that point. They connected into the election proper, and journalists were equally doing their best. From the point of ensuring that electoral materials, both sensitive and non-sensitive materials that were brought in, were adequately taken care of the way it should have been.
They, however, called on the media to improve in certain areas going forward.
We need to do more in terms of investigation. We rely so much on what has come to the public for us to cover and turn out to reports. But we don't go taking our time to sometimes investigate things that need to, those things that have come into public for us to cover. We need to do more. If we can do more, we can do better as journalists.
Journalists from the print, electronic and broadcast media have remained significant in ensuring that the right information is churned out before, during and after elections at all levels.
All right, despite the order by the Central Bank of Nigeria to deposit money banks to make the cash available, residents of the Federal Capital Territory said the Naira's scarcity continues to be a source of worry as they struggle to get cash. The Apex Bank in the country had over the weekend ordered commercial banks to operate during the weekend to ensure that cash is available in order to avoid the shutdown of our branches across the country as threatened by the Nigerian Labour Congress. The report.
With the reintroduction of old currency into circulation, many Nigerians expected that life will return to normal when it comes to cash availability. While the long queues in bank will come to an end, but the situation seems not to have changed.
Go bank now, you go see like 400 people, they bank. They go tell you say only 20 people then go attend in a day. Like my bank, First Bank, they tell you if you go there and I say if your number not reach 20, just they go. Next time they come. So cash no day now.
If they give them the money true, maybe they have special customers because some big men are going there for 15 million, 20 million. But all I know now is I know all the ATM now are paying. But any ATM now has crowd there. That is the issue.
If you go bank now, you go and be standing, you go and be waiting, queue too much. They will be giving number. When they start paying, if they even reach close to you, you go here say cash don't finish, money don't finish. You go still wait again, wasting of time. You go come on, leave your work, go stand for bank. Yeah, on Friday they debit me 4,000. Up to now, they never reverse it back for me.
People say they are available. Me, I don't see cash. Like me, I'm a kind of somebody where money they enter and always. And I do all my transaction with ATM. And I do spend more than what I'm supposed to when I have cash. I do spend more than that. So there is no cash.
I got more cash. Buy cash. Naira
crunch has actually reduced, but government still need to do more on the availability of Naira notes to cushion the hardship on the people. The reason why government should do more is that the charges by the POS operator is still high. They should make Naira available to make the charges come back to normal.
Yeah, the bank is giving them money, but the queue, and the amount of money you can get depends on the bank as well. Because some of the banks give much, while some give less. So, but the queue is the problem. Because when you go to the bank, you will queue for hours before you can even get money.
They appeal to the federal government to address the situation in order to help reduce their sufferings. Noel Samson, Trust TV News, Abuja.
Thank you, Noel Samson, for that report. We'll now go for a very short break. When we return, we'll look at what the newspapers are saying today. Please stay.
necessarily tribal or regional.
Welcome back. If you're just joining us, it's Daybreak on Trust Television, and it's that segment again where we bring you the newspaper reviews, all the stories that made the front pages of the major papers in Nigeria this morning. And as usual, we will begin with the Daily Trust, and the major story here stays with the cash crunch. Queues persist as Nigerians hoard Naira notes. POS operators mop up cash at ATMs. Charges drop to 100 per 1,000. Hoarders will have their fingers burnt, and this is coming from the CBN. And the Emefiele urges NLC to shelve protest. You'll find the details of the story if you open today's Daily Trust to page 4. Of course, you have this picture there of customers queuing up to withdraw cash at the bank in Sabo Yaba, Lagos State yesterday. And two other stories. PDP crisis court restrains IU from parading self as national chairman. With the riders, it's exercise in futility. That's according to the chair, and the battle has just started. This is coming from Governor Wike. You'll find the details of that on page 12. And to the stories below, the name marks: hunger, rights abuse increasing in Nigeria, others, and this is coming from the Amnesty International. Spain tops export destination of Nigerian product in Q4 2022. And meningitis killed 52 Nigerians in 21 states. You would think that in 2023, Nigeria should be doing better on this list. And two other stories: Adamawa governorship, Fintiri kicks as Binani demands results review. You find that on page 13. And gunmen kill 3 NSCDC officers in Imo. And finally, we have man remanded for selling fodder to ritualists for 1.8 million naira. What a world this country is turning to.
Now let's take a look at the Nation newspaper. The Nation newspaper has a late story that says court order restraining IU deepens PDP's post-poll crisis. And the rider says national chair dismisses suspension. The second rider, Wike backs action. And beneath that, we have supplementary polls hold April 15 in Oyo, Imo, Edo, others. And just beneath the masthead, we have how to make Nigerians unleash potential by ex-UK Prime Minister. And above the masthead, we have Ngige meets Emefiele Ajero to prevent NLC strike. And we have a rider that says, this is coming from the CBN, it says banks now have cash. And we also have colloquium put off for prayers to mark Tinubu's birthday. Beneath that, we have 77% Nigerian women risking cancer for using toning cream. And this is one piece of information a lot of Nigerian women may want to take very seriously.
Absolutely. And we move on to the Punch newspaper this morning. The Punch, you recall, had just celebrated 50 years of providing insightful journalism in Nigeria. And the major story here stays with the PDP. IU must go. G5 governors Atiku campaign clash. With the riders, Benue Court affirms IU suspension, adjourns case till April 17th. It is morally offensive for IU to remain chairman after electoral defeat. G5 camp. Only NEC can remove me, IU. And Wike orders selfish, says Atiku's presidential campaign cancel. And we have two pictures there, meetings and frantic efforts to make sure that activities at the financial hub of Nigeria is not brought to a standstill following the recent threat by the NLC. There you will find Ajero, the Minister of Labour, and of course the Governor of the Central Bank. Two other stories. Abacha died on the eve of dad's planned execution, dear son. You find that on page 3. And Lagos tenant stabs friends to death during argument. And Ramadan, VC, Senator-elect advises Muslim on kindness and sacrifice. And to the stories above, the name marks: Rep invite ministers firm over $82.4 billion oil sales. And don't travel to states of origin for census, says NPC. Nigeria can't defeat terrorism like UK, Boris Johnson. Nigeria can defeat terrorism like UK. And this is coming from former Prime Minister Boris Johnson. These are the major stories on the front page of the Punch newspaper. All right, now let's take a look at the Leadership newspaper. Still on the PDP crisis. It says PDP crisis deepens. Confusion trails IU's suspension. And the first rider says court bars national chairman. What executives disown suspension later. I will get injunction to vacate court order, IU vows. And we also have the war has just begun, says Wiki. And beneath that we have pictures of the three gladiators in the saga. We have that of the governor of Benue State Otom, we have that of the chairman of the party, Yosha Ayu, and then we have that of the governor of Rivers State, Yeson Wiki. And just above that we have Adamawa KB governorship candidates no fate April 15. We also have Naira scarcity persists as banks continue disbursement. And just above the masthead, pro-Tinubu groups protest interim government plot. We also have 2023 polls. Police arrest 781 suspects, record 489 infractions. Still on the leadership for today, global economy to fall to 30-year low. This is coming from the World Bank. We also have Media Complaints Commission for inauguration April. And finally, here we have gunmen kill 3 civil defense officers in Imo. Very sad incidents there, and that takes us to the Guardian newspaper this morning with the major headline. Nigerians have right to choose their leaders, says Boris Johnson. Tax politicians on helping citizens unleash their potentials. Court restrains IU from parading self as PDP national chairman. Only PDP NEC can suspend me, IU. Wike mocks IU, says fight against him has just started. And then you have pictures there of the visit of Boris Johnson alongside the Coordinator General Osage Ayim Osigwe's Foundation, Charles Ayim Osage, as well as representative of the President-elect Femi Pedro, the Director General, Nigeria Institute for International Affairs, Professor Ehosa, and the Deputy Governor of Lagos State, Dr. Babafemi Anzat, as well as the Chairman of the day, our own Chief Emeka Anyoku, and guest speaker, former British Prime Minister Boris Johnson, and Chief Anthony Ayim Osigwe at the 16th session of the Emmanuel Onyechere Osigwe Ayim Osigwe's lecture series in Lagos yesterday. And to other stories, INEC fixes April 15th for supplementary Guba elections, and Bayelsa APC members insist on disqualification of Silva from Guba race. 420,000 investors of 7 firms shun dividends over inflation bureaucracy. And PDP alleges plot to cancel more collected votes in Adamawa. These are the major stories on the front page of The Guardian. Now let's take a look at the Nigerian News Direct. The lead story is the same as what we have seen in some other papers on the PDP crisis. So I'll just take some others that were not in other papers. Above the masthead, we have investors in Nigeria hardly make profit due to hikes in MPR inflation rate. This is coming from experts. And we also have Defense Minister Mon's former Chief of General Staff, Lieutenant General Oladipo Dia. We still have here on the News Direct, NCC renews commitment to industry collaboration, inclusiveness. And below the pictorial, we have NLNG starts another round of commissioning of university teaching hospital projects in 4 states. We also have Bauchi State detects 7,806 cases of tuberculosis. These are the major stories on News Direct for today. And to first news this morning, we will take those stories that have not made the rounds in our previous reviews. Petition, Tinubu not served notice before traveling, and that's according to lawyer. And to other stories there, Global Terrorism Index clarifies position on IPOB listing. And prosecute OB over secret asset kept in tax haven, law firm urges the Code of Conduct Bureau. And to other stories, Umahi to Tinubu, put Wike at the core of your government. He has a lot to offer. Interesting perspective there coming from an APC governor also looking to vie for the seats of the 10th National Assembly as Senate President. These are the major stories on the front page of First News.
Now let's go over to this Nigeria. We have just by the masthead head there, CBN loans to government gallops to 3.77 trillion in 2 months. And we also have Chief of General Staff there to get state burial. This is coming from Ogun State Governor Abiodun. And then beneath that, we have police defy human rights laws, ban protest in Nasarawa. Pro-Tinubu protesters vow to resist interim government. And beneath that, we have INEC visits April 15 to conclude outstanding supplementary elections. These are the major stories on this Nigeria for today.
And moving on to Business Day, the paper with a different focus. The major story here, as expected, focuses on the economy, and it reads, Nigeria's distressed fiscal state faces 5 risks. You want to know what those risks are? You pick up a copy of today's Business Day. We have the photo from the doctoral degree confirmation of the MD of Zenith Bank alongside the Vice Chancellor and other dignitaries at the occasion. And to other stories, cargo planes stop Nigeria's flight over trapped funds. And commentary, why Nigeria needs multiple electricity market. And to the final story there on the front page, election flaws seen as threat to Nigeria's investment drive.
All right, we've come to the end of just the highlights of the newspapers. We'll go into analysis of some of the major stories. But for now, let's take a very short break. Please stay.
But in a situation where you find that a person look at the
not necessarily tribal or regional.
But I have said that. in a situation where you find that a look at this,
not necessarily tribal or regional.
because I have said that.
Welcome back. We are having a bit of difficulty with bringing our guests on because of some exigencies that have come up. We hope that somewhere within the program, when he comes around, he's able to serve you his own perspective on the front pages of the newspaper this morning. Nonetheless, we would attempt to look at some of the issues and provide you as much insight as we can, and that will be between me and Stella this morning, and we will try to do justice in our own way. But we wish we had somebody else maybe to bring slightly different perspective to what we probably have been talking about. Daily Trust, of course, is leading with the story around the cash crunch, which has not completely disappeared from our streets. We said this at the beginning of this program. We are continuing to see queues, especially in urban centers where there are massive population. We've seen what's coming in from Lagos, especially the mainland Lagos, where you have that huge populations. People still queuing up for the Naira. They are not sure whether it will be there by evening or the next morning.
That was what we talked about at the beginning of the show. I said a lot of Nigerians just want to get, it appears as if a lot of Nigerians just want to get this money now, know that they have the money and it's in their homes.
Absolutely.
So it's not like they want to have it in their homes and take it out. No,
absolutely.
It's like,
it's having for keeps.
Yes.
You want to wake up and look beside you and see some of those cash tucked and you feel.
And that is because of the hardship that occurred between since it started in January till this time.
That's right.
You know, and I think I don't know how much of awareness or reorientation the banks will have to do to actually make Nigerians take their money back to this bank, because it's going to be a lot.
It is going to be a lot. There are two things I think that we are going to contend with, and which most analysts have also raised. There is a crisis of confidence on the system, like you have noted, and so people want to be their own saviors. So they resorted to the very thing we wanted to defeat with the whole idea of a cashless society. Like you said, it will take some convincing. Maybe they will have to pump this money continually for another 1 month, so that people are sure that when they wake up the next morning, the ATMs will still be paying. But you will not blame Nigerians. We have just gone through, or rather, we are still going through nearly 1.5 years of persistent fuel queues.
Yes, in fact, in the story, somebody said, well, the fuel queues came and they never went away. What's the guarantee that this money issue will not come back again, the scarcity of money?
Absolutely.
So when he takes it down, he's going to keep it at home. That's what he actually said in the story.
So a lot of things are beginning to shape how people react to government institutions, because you are not sure what they are saying in the morning, and I mean, you could say one thing in the morning and you wake up by noon and they are taking a completely different course, and by evening there is a reversal of some sort.
But you know, there are some persons that are asking that, okay, so what exactly is the situation with the Naira redesign policy at this point? Because first there was scarcity of the cash, and then now you're trying to bring it back. But there were some reasons given for the mop-up, right? So what happened? I've seen some experts talk about the fact that maybe there wasn't a think tank that sat down to look at everything around it before the implementation, and that is why we got to this place in the first place. So
many arguments, if you like, around whether or not the objectives of this policy was achieved in the face of what appears to be a brutal incursion into the monetary space, if you like, by the Supreme Court. That's how people in the CBN see it. Like, we don't wake up one day and the Supreme Court probably say, no, don't fix interest rates at 1, keep it at 2.
Well, Sunday, you do know that the Supreme Court's judgment didn't come out of the blues.
Absolutely.
It came out of the fact that Nigerians were suffering and they needed to be a way out of the situation.
That's true, without playing the ostrich. So some of the conversations by analysts have been, and in fact the CBN, is that despite what we have seen, that they have largely achieved what they wanted to achieve. That today they set out to mop up about 60% of the funds in circulation. They ended up doing 3 trillion. And for them, whatever happens from now going forward, there is no way that 3 trillion is going to return.
Well, Sunday we still have some experts that will say while they were mopping up 3 trillion, the economy of the country, the GDP was contracting. In fact, I saw a report by Yemi Kale of the KPMG who said that by April, when the rating comes out, the economy would have contracted between 10 trillion to 15 trillion.
Absolutely.
That is a lot.
Yes.
When you're mopping up 3
if you listen to the governor at the last MPC, he said when you are in a dilemma, something has to give. So should we continue on the path that will probably exacerbate? The argument was that if they had not intervened, inflation would have been somewhere around 30%. And that means the money you have in your hand has 30% less value. And for them, that has more impact to individual than a GDP that doesn't put food on anybody's table. So something has to trade. We at this end, the best we can do is to give to amplify all voices. We hope for the sake of Nigeria that we are able to find some fine balance. The question I've always been asked also that in the face of all this, why are we returning the old naira back into circulation? If we had sufficient new money printed,
new notes.
Well, and their argument was, well, if they give out the new notes, the people whose original intention was to stock up money were not stocking them up for daily transaction. They were stocking them up for speculative purposes. And those are the actions that can harm the economy. So if you give them new notes, you would have settled their bid. They would go and stock back new notes. So they are giving them back old notes. So when the time comes by December 31st.
So if we were to go with that line of argument, then it would be assumed that there's actually sufficient new notes, which a lot of Nigerians do not believe.
So, well, the argument is they are putting back the old notes. So when it's time by December 31st, when there will be no more new English to be spoken, they will have to then bring back those new notes. So for them, it's strategic, even though it appears like it's a confirmation around the arguments that there aren't sufficient new notes in circulation. So many sides to the argument. I hope in the course of time we will see the true benefits to the economy.
And there was a report yesterday that the NLC will be briefing the press today on whether or not it will still go ahead with its planned strike slated for tomorrow. And that was after a meeting with the governor of the central bank
and the minister of labor. It's good that that meeting is happening, and I think it's in view of that meeting that we saw the kind of speed with which Daily Trust broke the story, if you recall, about a week ago, that there had been conclusions to flood the banks with old notes. But the CBN did not come out to confirm that story until late Friday, about the close of business, when they instructed bank. Unfortunately, by that time, it was difficult for some banks to have had access to the cash. So those who had were able to open over the weekends. Most of them eventually got cash supplies, I think, by yesterday. And we saw considerably how that has helped douse the tension.
So is it just one of that last weekend, or do you imagine that next weekend as well, considering that there are still queues at the banks?
If you listen to the tone of the governor, the impression is that there is a daily need assessment that is ongoing, where they are able to measure whether we are at the point of saturation or not. If that happens faster, then probably there will be no need for weekend banking. But if not, we probably will be seeing more weekend banking.
All right, but then look at the first writer to this story says POS operators mop up cash at the ATMs. And when you go into the story, what the POS operators are saying is that the bank is not giving them money directly as agents. They were empowered to do this. It's a business for them. So they are also going to queue like every other citizen. And that is making it difficult because according to the guy, he said they go in with lots of ATM cards so that they can withdraw as much as possible because they're going to transact with it. So shouldn't there be a way by which this particular group of people can be taken care of so that...
Well, that should have been the argument, but sometimes it's difficult to listen to a single story. The experience Nigerians have had with the POS operators the last couple of weeks have not been funny. Even where they've had access to the cash, the charges are way off the roof. The CBN, in fact, said they saw a lot of practices. They had to enjoy it because of the Nigerian situation, but they were criminal in some sorts because what happens was you see a large departmental store that had probably ordered for like 10 POS points.
What for?
Because of the volume of sales and the traffic. And they had ordered for 10. And then somewhere within this crisis, they retained 2 and dispatched 6 others or 8 others
out of the store.
Out of the store. And they were showing up as POS operators, getting these fundings and you know, just playing arbitrage. You know, you get regulated funds.
That's what you have in Nigeria. Always the same Nigerians taking advantage of a bad situation to hurt fellow citizens.
Absolutely. You know. So on the one hand, you want to feel pity, but from what some of us have learned, in fact, you would know about the popular joke that had gone round about the most important people in Nigeria at this time. POS operators and fuel pump attendants.
Yeah.
The PDP crisis
is dominating.
It's beginning to take the line of the crisis. We saw that through Shomele out of office. They went to his word. He got a suspension. He said that would not stand, and they've gone to a court to validate that suspension. We are seeing all kinds of gymnastics playing out. Well, does it look like IU is going to withstand?
Well, according to the argument from IU, and then according to the constitution of the PDP as amended, no organ of the party at the state or ward level has powers to, you know, carry out disciplinary action against a member of the executive. So in that case, you know, going by that constitution, I don't know how far that will stand. But now we have a situation where a court has stopped him from parading himself as, you know, chairman of the party.
It started like this with the APC former chairman. It was dismissed as the ranting of some few disgruntled elements. And then they waited until the issue became status bar. And they approached the higher court to say this man has been parading himself falsely. And when they tried to move, the law had taken his position because, again, the party constitution recognized the fact that you are a member of the party first from the ward.
Yes, in the past it used to be that at the ward they could actually do that. But I guess maybe that process was abused or something. I don't know. But, you know, the PDP amended its constitution to show that at the ward level you cannot, when the person is an executive member of the party.
Oh. Interesting. We will continue to keep tabs on this development.
But then there are some persons that are wondering why this is coming at this point, because before the elections there were, you know, calls for his resignation, his removal and all of that, and that was even one of the fights the G5 led by Governor of Rivers State you know, held on to. So some persons are saying, well, the elections have come and gone, so this action to what end at this point?
Do you think that some genuine reconciliation can happen with an IU remaining at the national chair? The question really is, what does he have to lose? He's gone into an election. Well, they're still challenging the outcome in a court,
you know,
and they've not come out successful. And partly so, like you rightly identify, because of the crisis that engulfed the party, largely around his chairmanship. Isn't it time, you think, he take a walk and allow some kind of reconciliation happen at that level?
And you know, like some political experts have always said, that immediately after an election is the time for any party to start rebuilding itself ahead of another election. That it's never too early to prepare. So
yes, I mean, you know, if people like UK are saying the problem has just started,
exactly, saying that
and somehow they've retained 2 states. Oyo is there, Enugu is also there. Yes, and hopefully, who knows, WK's protege, the governor of Rivers State, also won his election. Those funds and those persons probably will continue to push against his chairmanship. They have to find a way. Some ambitions have to end, and some genuine healings have to happen.
Yeah, either way we look at it, something is brewing. And in the coming days, we're going to see more of this. Because,
absolutely.
I mean, when we heard 2 days ago that the ward has suspended it, a lot of us were like, well, the ward. I mean, the PDP constitution does not allow you anymore. But then we saw that the matter is now getting bigger. You know, it's clear that something is brewing.
Another interesting development across different platforms is the situation in Adamawa. Taking very interesting dimensions. We now see women protesting in Abuja, even though they did not vote in Adamawa or neither of Adamawa extraction.
How do you know they didn't vote in Adamawa? They may have voted in Adamawa and then returned to Abuja.
Stakeholders in Adamawa are saying, leave us alone. You are not part of this process. We don't understand what your interests are. We understand the push for a woman wanting a woman, but we don't understand why Adamawa has to be the platform.
You know, another thing, I think one of the problems for the Adamawa situation was that the fact that some fake results emanated on the day of the collation of results, where before it was concluded, one of the candidates was declared winner by certain people, and in fact I saw a lot of congratulatory messages, so much so that I was wondering that how come we hadn't received this report, only to find out that it wasn't true. Nobody had been declared winner at that time. So I think that incident
modeled up a lot.
Yes,
and then, indeed. Adamawa, it's a very interesting case. I remember at the time we were saying in the newsroom that how is it possible that an election where we had 2 million voters in places like Kano had been concluded and a small Adamawa state with under 700 or under 800,000 votes is still... in fact, we waited for one local government for more than 24 hours, you recall. And at some point, what the INEC was doing was to, in fact, go to its IREV to pick a result to authenticate collation rather than its returning officer. I think it speaks to how much the politicians attempted to model up quite a number of things. And that silence or whatever it was that was coming from Adama had, you know, almost jeopardized the security of the state because every party was saying whatever is coming would make us a winner. And these guys are holding on to it because they were attempting to manipulate.
And even at this point, as you know, 2 days ago, the candidate of the APC, Aisha Binani, said that she's calling for a review of the election in some local government areas. And today, we have in the paper the governor, who is the candidate of the PDP. Saying there is no need for that. Because actually, he's leading at this point.
That's right. Why would you want a review of when you it does practically look like you're coasting home with nearly 31,000 votes. And you have, they are talking, the INEC has fixed April 15, by the way, for a rerun. And in places where the total tally of votes are somewhere around 37,000. So the argument from the side of the governor is there is no chance that you are going to pick the entire 37.
Well, what if all 37 goes to one candidate? I'm just saying.
That would be some magic for the women folk. Meningitis, a very touching topic, comes every time we have the cycle of heats. Right from when we were kids, there has been all kinds of campaign around meningitis. Why is it difficult for us as a country to nip this in the bud?
Well, just as it's difficult for us to nip malaria in the bud. You see, the issue with meningitis is that it's just like cholera, it's just like Lassa fever. Every day it comes up, we throw the figures around, we report it as media people and all of that, but it doesn't change anything. Next year we'll have the same thing. So you'll be wondering, like you rightfully noted, what are the lessons learned every year it comes, and what do we take out of it, and how do we improve so that next year it doesn't get there? But
but do you sometimes feel there is a failing on the part of the media to properly dramatize what these things are, or we leave them at the realms of? I mean, the first time I heard the word meningitis, it felt like some concussion. They were just funny. I remember we were calling friends by the names, you know, when you hear strange words. So have we failed to properly provide enlightenment on our part, for instance, to local communities in ways and manners that they could understand? Because this is easily preventable. You just allow for some ventilation in your room so that you can breathe easy. How do people even get to sleep stocked up in places where there are no air? Well,
it's not like I'm holding brief for them, but you know, while they are battling the heat, there's mosquito out there. So when you think of opening the windows, mosquitoes, but then there are other ways. They could fix mosquito nets around their homes, the windows and everything, just to ensure that they can open the windows, get the ventilation without the mosquitoes actually coming in. And then don't forget that there are also some areas, actually, I've seen pictures where about 10 persons are sleeping in a very crowded space, very small space, and all that's a problem.
That is a problem. Sometimes the citizens accuse us of making things look easy. It's like whenever we call people to relocate from flood plains, and they tell you relocate to where exactly.
And when you talk about whether the media is not doing enough, actually I think the media is, because there are times that you do so much editorials on this thing that sometimes you're like, what are you going to write again? Do you understand? Like, you know, the floods will soon be here.
Absolutely.
And I don't know how much lessons were taken from the one of last year.
Absolutely.
You know, so
still staying with one or two sad stories that made the front pages this morning, we hear that gunmen killed 3 NSCDC officers in Imo. We are continuing to lose very precious resource, not necessarily because they are NSCDC officers, but because they are Nigerians. They are citizens who have decided to put their life at the fore of fighting or protecting the citizenry, now losing their life ultimately to people who just kill them for reasons you find very difficult to explain. If you have a grouse against the state, Why kill a fellow human being who possibly may even be from your local community?
Who possibly may also be feeling the same pinch, the same problems that you think that you're feeling. You know, what makes you think that the person is getting it any better than you are? And the fact that these killings have continued, I mean, this is in Imo, that region in the past 1 year, 2 years has been under this kind of attacks.
You know, and incidences like this would then begin to bring up the arguments around whether or not the civil defense guys should be armed in the first place. If you are deploying civil defenders, as they are called, to a crisis-prone area, one wonders whether you actually expect them to go confront this men of the underworld bearing sticks or barely showing up with uniforms and thinking people will be afraid.
But as you know, even policemen have been killed. Soldiers have been killed. So it's not even just because these people are not always armed, because I think some of them are armed these days, but it's the fact that these people, this is their job. This is what they are doing. So I don't see why they should be attacked and killed just for the sake of it, or you know. Or no, like you said, if you have a grouse against this against the state, there are channels through which they can be addressed, and I think if one goes through those channels, you could get some kind of results. Absolutely, and there have been several arguments also around whether or not the state is also sincere in its approach in fighting the menace in the East especially. I think the argument by some analysts is that we have allowed this to fester for too long. And we are not seeing the kind of resolve, you know, really, that would engender the kind of confidence that would even enable people to point out, because what we have seen is it appears that once anybody stands up to these non-state actors, they find a way of eliminating you. During the election, the crisis even became worse. We hope somehow the government comes up with some kind of strategy to nip this in the bud as a people. You know, one problem or one thing that you must have observed in Nigeria is the fact that something starts gradually, and then, I don't know, maybe the people that should take care of it pretend as if it's not there. Act as if, oh, it's a little problem that's just going to go away. We have seen that happen, and we have seen it, you know, go big. So I wonder why this was allowed to fester, grow to the point where it is right now. When I think back to how it started, I never imagined that it would get to this point. Absolutely. And then I tell myself that if actions were taken at that time, would we have got to this place? You know, we hope also. Some analysts have said that the governors in this region find a way to talk to each other. It appears that everybody seems to be working in silos. There are no coordinated, because the eastern part of the country is not exactly very big. With some level of coordination, they should be able to close in on these forces, and maybe supported by the federal government, we should be able to bring these situations under control. Sunday, before we go, we just need to talk about this. Man remanded for selling father to ritualists for 1.8 million. He sold his own father for 1.8 million naira. It's completely unfathomable. You can't understand it. And well, I don't know, at the risk of sounding very funny, I wonder what amount of money, 1.8 million, I wonder what problem you can say. That's the cost of a rent in some suburb in Abuja. I don't understand that. It's absolutely. The story says he sold his father to a native doctor for 1.8 million and he knew that the native doctor wanted the father for ritual purposes. It's amazing. It's what the kind of stories you hear from across Nigeria. For how much? You want to wonder, and how much is your father really worth to you? Exactly. For standing by you, for protecting you. I mean, they had the option of doing and for just being a father. For just being a father in a country like Nigeria. Yes. I think it's important to underline that. There's the much we can bring to you on this segment. I hope we have been able to provide you some insights with regards to some of the stories that made the front pages of the paper. We would take a short break at this point and return at the top of the hour to serve you more. Please stay with us.
Good morning, Nigeria, and welcome to Daybreak on Trust Television. It's 8 a.m. this morning, and I am Sunday Michael Ogun.
Welcome back. I'm Stella Yaji, and if you're just joining us, we're already 1 hour into the show.
Indeed, we are 1 hour into the show. We are cruising at 45,000 meters above sea level, if you like.
Yeah, right.
And the weather is bright. And we don't envisage any turbulence. So sit back, fasten your seatbelt, and enjoy the show as we move. We bring you the headlines on this. PDP chairman, you break silence. My purported suspension, a futility.
Kidnapped FCT chief's wife, son freed after 7 weeks.
And 3 NSCDC officers gunned down in Imo.
Now let's take a look at the details. Senator Yosha Ayu, the embattled national chairman of the People's Democratic Party, has described his purported suspension as an exercise in futility. His reaction is contained in a statement by his special advisor on media and communications, Simon Swam, in Abuja on Monday. Ayu said his attention had been drawn to rumors that he had been suspended by the executive committee of his ward. According to him, he had not been suspended, and that the executive members of his ward of Boko local government area of Benue State had no legal standing.
And moving on to other stories, there was tension in the Ngo-Okpala area of Imo State on Monday as gunmen killed 3 personnel of the Nigeria Security and Civil Defense Corps. A correspondent gathered that the incident took place at the Ekiasu market in Obiagu community in the Ngo-Okpala local government area of the state. A witness who spoke anonymously said the officers were attacked in the early hours of Monday in an ambush while they were in their vehicle. Security operatives have taken over the community and were said to be arresting youths of the community in order to fish out the culprit. Spokesperson for the police in the state, ASP Henry Okoye, who confirmed the murder of the 3 NSCDC personnel, said the security operatives had moved into the community and normalcy has been restored.
Now, over on to another story here. The abducted wife of the traditional ruler of Bokpe in Kwali Area Council of the FCT, Mrs. Sadia Hassan, and her son, Osama Hassan, have regained their freedom after being held captive for 7 weeks by their abductors. City and Crime had reported that bandits on Saturday, February 4, 2023, abducted one of the chief's wives, 2 sons, and 3 other residents of the area from their residences. Confirming the release of the chief's wife and the son through telephone to a report on Sunday, a member of the family, Danjuma Osman, said they were freed on Saturday evening after collecting 2.5 million naira, foodstuff, hard drugs, energy drinks, and wine in a forest in Kogi State. Usman, who noted that the kidnappers refused to release the other son of the chief, Hamisu, and the 2 other victims, said the bandits were demanding another 3 million naira before they would be freed.
And that's it on our news highlight. We move on to our packages this morning. Despite pulling over 6 billion votes and winning in 11 states, and the Federal Capital Territory, the presidential election, and the Federal Capital Territory, the Labour Party has failed to secure more than 1 state at the just concluded governorship and State House of Assembly polls. Trustee Shafiu Suleiman takes a look at the factors that affected the winning trajectory of the new political party, now considered a third force in Nigeria.
The Labour Party, LP, has been on the ballot for over 20 years now, fielding candidates as a pro-workers political organization, but without much success. Its presidential candidate, Peter Obi, after being Anambra State Governor for 8 years, had an unprecedented outing at the February 25 election, polling 6,101,533 votes to come third ahead of NNPP's Rabiu Kwankwaso, who garnered 1,496,687 votes.
Presidential election came with a lot of confirmation of assurance by the Independent Electoral Commission. One, the Independent Electoral Commission promised that results will be pasted and be transmitted directly at the polling units. That gave hope. And then there was serious ways in which the issue of vote buying was kind of blocked in such a way that people will not buy the vote of the electorate.
Peter Obi successfully won 8 senatorial and 34 House of Representatives seats, in addition to securing a number of state assembly positions at the just concluded elections. Its winning streak, however, was not sustained at the governorship election, with only Abia State in its kitty.
As of today, the result of the presidential election is yet to be uploaded into the INEC RF server. This now affected seriously because a lot of people now lost trust. The trust that they had before, where a lot of them came from outside this country to come and vote, hoping that their vote will count. So in the governorship election, people now become apprehensive and they did not trust the system anymore.
Though the party's performance at the presidential election was attributed to several factors, pundits say politics of ethnic and religious identity were largely responsible. With supplementary election expected to hold in 46 constituencies earlier declared inconclusive by the Independent National Electoral Commission (INEC), it remains to be seen if Labour Party will consolidate on its electoral winning trajectory. Shafiu Suleiman, Trust TV News, Abuja.
All right, thank you, Shafiu. The Nigerian media has been commended for displaying a high level of professionalism in its coverage of the 2023 general elections. A cross-section of Benue residents made the commendation while appraising media coverage for the elections. Jimmy Azande completes the report.
Long before the commencement of the elections, members of the Fourth Estate of the Realm kept their lenses on and their eyes and ears wide open to educate, as well as enlighten members of the public in different languages to enable them perform their civic responsibilities. Those who spoke in Makurdi said the organized media performed excellently, according to the guidelines of INEC, as well as ethics of the journalism profession.
They set agenda for political parties and for politicians. So if I can just mention a few, you had some TV stations, for example, that ran situation rooms, following on a minute-by-minute activities across the country and at the, with the INEC. So that was impressive because they brought key political figures to speak on topical issues. They engaged them, they made sure issues that, and there was a lot of investigation to make sure the facts came out on every issue.
The media, they behave according to the ethics of their work. They only report those things they found from INEC. There's no subtraction and there's no addition. The media cooperated in several areas. Even at the collection of state collection of election results for presidential and that of the governorship, the media were with us from the beginning to the end.
The journalists were also commended for their aggressive voter education, which enhanced the smooth process at the polls.
At the polling stations, when people came to cause havoc, they were immediately caught by the camera of the media persons, and then they also engaged citizens who did, you call it citizen journalism or something, so they could get clips from citizens and showed. So it was an innovation that was very well used. I think the media did very well.
They have kept a watch on the INEC and the political players to ensure that all of them were playing by the rules. It all started from that point. They connected into the election proper, and journalists were equally doing their best. From the point of ensuring that electoral materials, both sensitive and non-sensitive materials that were brought in, were adequately taken care of the way it should have been.
They, however, called on the media to improve in certain areas going forward.
We need to do more in terms of investigation. We rely so much on what has come to the public for us to cover and turn out reports. But we don't go taking our time to sometimes investigating things that need to, those things that have come into public for us to cover. We need to do more. If we can do more, we can do better as journalists.
Journalists from the print, electronic and broadcast media have remained significant in ensuring that the right information is churned out before, during and after elections at all levels.
And moving on, despite the order by the Nigerian Central Bank to deposit money banks to make the Naira available, residents of the capital city say the Naira scarcity continues to be a source of worry as they struggle to get cash. The Apex Bank had over the weekend ordered commercial banks to operate during the weekends to ensure that cash is available in order to avoid a shutdown of our branches across the country as threatened by the Nigerian Labour Congress. The report.
With the reintroduction of old currency into circulation, many Nigerians expected that life will return to normal when it comes to cash availability. While the long queues the bank will come to an end, but the situation seems not to have changed.
Go bank now, you go see like 400 people, they bank. They go tell you say only 20 people then go attend in a day. Like my bank, First Bank, they tell you if you go there and I say if your number not reach 20, just they go. Next time they come. So cash no day now.
If they give them the money true, maybe they have special customers because some big men are going there for 15 million, 20 million. But all I know now is I know all the ATM now are paying. But any ATM now has crowd there. That is the issue.
If you go bank now, you go and be standing, you go and be waiting, queue too much. They will be giving number. When they start paying, if they even reach close to you, you go here say cash don't finish, money don't finish. You go still wait again, wasting of time. You go come on, leave your work, go stand for bank. Yeah, on Friday they debit me 4,000 up to now. They never reverse it back for me.
People say they are available. Me, I don't see cash. Like me, I'm a kind of somebody where money they enter and always. And I do all my transaction with ATM. And I do spend more than what I'm supposed to when I have cash. I do spend more than that. So there's no cash.
I got more cash. Ba cash.
Naira crunch has actually reduced, but government still need to do more on the availability of Naira notes to cushion the hardship on the people. The reason why government should do more is that the charges by the POS operator is still high. They should make Naira available to make the charges come back to normal.
Yeah, the bank is giving them money, but the queue, and the amount of money you can get depends on the bank as well. Because some of the banks give much, while some give less. So, but the queue is the problem. Because when you go to the bank, you will queue for hours before you can even get money.
They appeal to the federal government to address the situation in order to help reduce their sufferings. Noel Samson, Trust TV News, Abuja.
All right, thank you, Noel Samson, for that report. We'll now go for a very short break. When we return, we'll go into our first discussion of the day. Don't go anywhere.
documenting the Nigerian story.
Welcome back. If you're just joining us, it's Daybreak on Trust Television, and we're prepared to bring you our first conversation. You don't want to know what I was discussing with Stella behind the camera. Someday, we hope you're able to come in here. The conversations off camera are sometimes more interesting than what you get, but be that as it may, we move into our first conversation this morning. The Independent National Electoral Commission has budgeted over $3 billion to defend the results of the February 25th presidential elections and National Assembly, as well as the March 18 governorship and state assembly polls. So far, over 100 election petitions have been filed by aggrieved candidates and their parties across the country. Let us look at this alongside the cost of running elections in Nigeria. We have joining us in the studio a friend of the house who always obliges us as always, chief strategist and policy analyst, as well as the Chief Executive Officer, Global Investment and Trade Company, Malam Baba Yusuf. It's a pleasure to have you join us this morning.
Thank you for having me, Sunday and Stella.
Yes,
thank you.
Ramadan Kareem, by the way.
Ramadan Kareem.
Yes. Clearly, the fasting doesn't seem to have taken any impact on you.
You get used to it over time.
And today we're on number 6 already.
Number 6 already, yes.
Having said that, I've been calling all my friends and telling them I'm still waiting for my iftar invitation.
That's the part that is more interesting
yes,
for you.
More interesting for me.
That's the part where all of us are fasting.
Yes,
absolutely.
Yes. Absolutely. Recently, or rather in the last couple of days, INEC, became clear or came to the public knowledge that INEC has voted $3 billion, for litigations over the outcomes of elections. The report is also telling us as at this time that we have over 100 litigations already. Remember, the INEC chairman was complaining sometimes in November that there have been over 600 pre-elections litigations that are already draining largely into the resources of the electoral umpire. And now we hear another $3 billion. That has got tongue wagging whether or not this isn't too much money to put into a process that had taken 300 billion or over 300 billion to deliver. When you heard this story, or rather saw those figures being bandied around, what exactly went through your mind?
Well, thank you very much. To be honest, in my own opinion, there is nothing spectacular about the cost, the projected cost or budgeted cost, approved cost, as the case may be, $3 billion for the 2023 litigation, for INEC to carry. First of all, we need to step back a bit and look at the entire scenario of elections, and then go back a bit and look at the years before, nationally in Nigeria and even across the world. Election is always an expensive venture, okay? And if you look at even last year, around that same time, you mentioned the chair of the INEC, Professor Mahmoud, was talking about $2 billion, to sorting out election litigation issues, for 2022, 2023, $3 billion. Don't forget that this is a cost that is coming during a critical election cycle. This is the major election cycle, that comes around every 4 years. Presidential, National Assembly, gubernatorial, and the State Assembly. If you even look at it, this is INEC that is superintending the entire process nationally. If you ask around the costs of litigation that the politicians carry, then you can have an idea about how much, money actually, goes into the entire process. Presidential, you see if you look at the 3 frontline contenders, or 4, sorry, including the APC, PDP, NNPP, and the Labour Party presidential candidate, you see the kind of senior advocates, the team of lawyers they hire. Those guys don't come cheap. 19, 15 sons and their support system. The entire process is an expensive venture. Maybe further down the line, things may be lesser. Another factor that I think contributes, if we're now talking about the factors, could be what I call sometimes avoidable circumstances that lead to litigations. Some of the processes, probably if they were more transparent and better, looking at the entire the cost of setting up one of the game-changing platforms for this election, the bypass, the IRF, and all that, over 300 billion. One would have expected that would have scaled down, if you like, some of these, what I call ripple effect costs of election. Probably, if these things have worked 100% okay, one would expect. But then, as we know also, as our election, our polity is evolving, it is always difficult, even if it is the 100% transparent process, for a lot of people to take it wholesome and accept that people have lost elections. So, to my mind, the cost is expected. I'm not justifying it, but I'm saying it is always an expensive venture.
Yeah, shortly after INEC said that it had budgeted 3 billion, the PDP quickly responded and said that, criticized them for voting that huge amount of money, saying that it's the money that could be used for developmental, to develop other sectors of the country. And then the Labour Party also said that if INEC had done what it ought to have done, this would not come up. Do you think so? What do you say to that?
Yeah, first of all, to answer to the PDP criticism, or to all of them, it's just part of the political posturing and rhetorics to justify everybody's position with regards to the situation on ground, to be honest. Secondly, the position of the Labour Party is more or less what I said earlier, that probably if the execution of the electoral process has gone as expected or as planned 100%, especially with regards to the deployment of technology, and the logistics angle of it, that maybe would have impacted positively in scaling down the cost of litigation. But like I said, political culture-wise, in terms of the political evolution of Nigeria, maybe the cost would have been marginally reduced, to be honest, because the natural instinct of politicians in Nigeria is to go to court to challenge the process, of elections. But I agree that if the process is better, maybe it will scale it down a bit. But as we evolve, is what will happen. Let me say this also. Something crossed my mind, Stella. Apart from the process itself that we are challenging, there's another critical factor, Sunday, and that is, as we go into the election period, intra-party squabbles, have been there. Some of them, the pre-election matters, some of them may even come up later, after elections are declared, and some people within the ranks and file of the parties will go to court to say they are the rightful candidates. INEC is obliged, because mostly when INEC is added, every election petition or election litigation will have INEC as a respondent, for example. And it is obliged by that to go to court and to stand their ground to defend their position, as the case may be. And to that extent, there will be a cost to that. You give an example. Do you remember the very, famous case of His Excellency Rotimi Amici, when, remind me the name of the governor that emerged at that time?
Celestine Omehia.
Celestine Omehia, thank you very much. And Amici went to court after the declaration of Celestine. You know how long it took? Up to Supreme Court. And Right Honorable Rotimi Amici was given the mandate. You understand? So these are litigations that come. These are not initially what we see as the traditional, this one wins and loses and he goes to court. These are also what I call peripheral actors that come into the political game, and rightly so, because the Constitution allows it for them to fight what they believe is rightfully theirs, which adds to the cost of litigation. So these are some of the things that I believe, add up to the cost of litigation.
You said something quite instructive in the course of your submissions, and that's where my next question would draw on. Litigations arising from the conduct of the election specifically. Where do you see the problem largely? Is it with the introduction of technology or the human elements that continue to complicate the use of technology, as we have seen, or rather we saw with the presidential elections? To avoid a situation where we continue to vote this much money to it, where do you think the tinkering has to happen, having invested so much in the introduction of IT?
To my mind, the critical issue is a human issue, because the fundamental issue is a cultural issue. INEC is not an island on its own. INEC is a subset, or is a member of a whole governance framework of Nigeria, the civil service, the public service, the Nigerianness in us, and the people that drive the process, whether within INEC or outside INEC. You can bring the best of technologies. We've seen this situation with IREV and BIVAS. You deploy a lot of money to improve a process, to ensure there's better transparency. And then what do you have? The players, the activators, or the people that will action the technology to work, are not able to, to deliver as expected. And therefore technology in that case is not able to give us what we want. So we are not there yet, unless our cultural disposition in terms of how we see ourselves, in terms of how we drive the system changes. You can bring whatever technology, because conversely, in fairness to INEC also, the failure of the technology is not totally the fault of INEC, if you look at it in this particular case. Because although I'm not happy with INEC, because I keep on saying their communication strategy failed, because they came later to bring a germane issue to the table, the issue of not the glitch, also the fact that there was a cyber attack on their infrastructure, which is an expected situation. It has happened in one of the best technology-driven polity in Nigeria, in the world, which is the United States of America. We heard interference by Putin and all that. So, but then coming after the fact makes it look a bit suspect. But then we know, even in the private sector, the banks and other institutions are always facing the vagaries of cyber attack and all that. And all those are human factors that impact on technology. Right? So I will align myself with the fact that unless the human factor is addressed, you can bring whatever technology you want, you will still be where we are, for example, today.
All right, so you're talking about human factor, addressing human factors. Yeah, a lot of people have talked about that, because yes, INEC brought beavers to see that there's more credibility and transparency. However, the beavers in some areas were hijacked. And we do know INEC will not ask that its own equipment should be hijacked. Yes. So it should be people who have interest in the election. Absolutely. So how do we manage that? Because, for instance, we have people who take part in a process. Maybe they also contributed in subverting that process, and they still go to court. Yes. So how do we deal with that?
That is the dilemma of the Nigerian situation. It's not just in our politics, it's in the way we do things in our lives, Like you rightly said, the political players were undermining the process and then going back on the sidelines and pointing accusing fingers at the electoral umpire or the political opponents. So it's like we are undermining ourselves in a manner of speaking. And now this is it requires a societal reorientation, a change of mindset, by the people of Nigeria, because the leaders, like I always say, are a product of a society, whether they are political leaders or whatever. And to that extent, unless there is that societal, revaluation and reorientation, a change of mindset, we'll continue seeing this. Sometimes we even know the players. It's not obvious they are hidden. But then you don't, because there are no consequences for any action in Nigeria, all these kind of things happen.
All right. Also, I recognize and appreciate the fact that everybody has a right to seek justice if you feel that, you know, you have been undermined in any way. However, I have seen some parties in the presidential election, there's some parties that went to court. I had to go back to look at how many figures they got and what number they came. It was very, very, you know. So is there a way, and those, is there a way, I know it may not be democratic, but is there a way they can reduce the number? Maybe the first runner-up, second runner-up, third runner-up, so that somebody who came 10th or 12th doesn't say he's going to court?
So long as we are practicing democracy, Stella.
I saw a particular party yesterday and I was shocked that party was in court.
No, it's okay. It's within their rights to do that, to exercise their franchise and to continue.
But that would be adding cost to INEC's
That is the point I'm making. So it's not just about INEC banding some amount of money or creating jobs for the boys, even if that is the case, but then there is justification for that, to be honest. And in fairness, unless you have proof, you cannot go that route. The fact is, there is, like I said, those are the kind of the peripheral actors I'm talking about that create the cost, and this cost has to be carried because it's within their fundamental human right as provided in the Constitution to seek the redress, whether it is reasonable or unreasonable, whether it is realistic or unrealistic, you know, and that is one of the costs that has to be carried, the burden that we all have to carry as a nation.
Interesting. Interesting.
Yeah.
We will leave INEC on the sideline for now. I'm sure INEC will continue to reverberate across news channels in this country for the foreseeable future.
Yeah.
Moving on to something very interesting that happened. The president ascended to 16 constitutional amendment bill recently, and with some very interesting amendments there. As most political observers like you would have noted, now state assemblies and judiciary would now get financial autonomy. Hopefully we can begin to see a semblance of democracy at the state level as we get the opportunity to criticize at the center. And of course the president in that provision is now mandating the president-elect, whoever that is, in the future to appoint his ministers within 60 days. What's your impression of this new amendment?
Political evolution is happening, Sunday. We are evolving. I said somewhere that some of the improvement factors in our evolving polity will be mistakes, missteps, and some critical happenings in our polity. Interestingly, these bills had been in the legislature for a while. It has to pass through provisions of the specifically Section 9, subsection 1 and 2 of the Constitution. It provides for amendment of the Constitution. So it was, at the end of the day, it passed through the legislative process and it was sent to the President for accent in January this year. It's coming at the twilight of the administration of possibly the person that have triggered the necessity for some of the provisions of this amendment of the Constitution, particularly mandating the president or the president-elect, as the case may be, to present members of his Federal Executive Council for nominees for screening at the National Assembly. I think it's a takeout of what happened in 2015 when President Buhari came into power, and it took ages. It almost looked like forever before we had a Federal Executive Council. I think that those are that in that particular instance is a step taken to address that issue.
Okay, do you think that step, that's before Stella comes on, was far-reaching? I know there were arguments also around not just presenting vague names, like because you expect ministers from every state, you basically just line up 36 persons, or as we have with other government, one from every region, pushing it to about 42. Should it have gone further to begin to say, submit names with specific qualifications, with a bit of profile and designation, what the possible designation will be in your government, so that when questionings are done, rather than the vague, broad questionings that we see, or the take-a-bow kind of questionings that we see, we would have been able to drill down on what the antecedents of these persons are, as well as what whether they have an understanding of the responsibility that they have been nominated for. Do you think this constitution amendment should have further specify this kind of reforms?
Yeah, it could have done. It could have been better if it had come, maybe use the word distilled further the maybe requirements or the parameters for that. But I think because we are still evolving, a very critical step has been taken that will force the hand of the president to take action within 60 days. The provision of the constitution that says every state must have representation at the federal executive, germane important, is in the interest of national unity, is the interest of the federal character, you know, to address our diversity and all that. And I must say, Nigeria is so blessed that each and every region, each and every state, you know, is blessed with people of quality, you know, in various spheres of life and endeavors that will fit into any kind of role that is required to provide service at that level. However, I think there are other ways that this can be dealt with. The National Assembly can come within their internal rules to make provisions for this, to also demonstrate that they are a legislature that makes sense, a legislature that addresses critical issues and not just rubber stamps. They should demonstrate by their internal rules, either by improving their internal rules or whatever, to say, Mr. President, as you are submitting these names, we would like to have that, this, and that. That will help guide our process better, to refine it. However, if I would take a little bit of time to sit on the other side of maybe a president, by the grace of God, to say, why should I tell you, ab initio, considering the state of our polity today? In the United States of America, maybe yes. But here, possibly if a president submits a name or a list of names, having addressed the 36 states and federal capital territory matter, and says this is going to help the ab initio, it creates chaos, because now you will have agitation within the framework of juicy ministries and not so juicy ministries, and that will now constitute another logjam within the negotiation process to say, Mr. President, the Minister of Petroleum should come from our zone and all that. Maybe that is part of the problem. But then it is what it is. A president that has the political will take a position and say, these are the potential roles. We can go as far as saying 1 or 2 possible roles for each person without narrowing it down to a singular position. But indeed, I agree. The process of screening nominees should be distilled and refined for us to get the best out of these nominees when they are being screened, to know that they have the capacity to deliver. Indeed, we have people that have excelled in their various spheres of endeavor, but by virtue of possibly some weaknesses with regards to, you know, what we call in human resource, moving from specialist to generalist role, which all the members of the Federal Executive Council are at what you call a generalist role from a strategic perspective. They don't have to be at the specialist role because they've gone beyond that. The specialists are down the radar from the PAMSECs and directors. But indeed, the leadership quality at the generalist role is critical. You'll have somebody that is at the top echelon of his profession, but he's sent to another ministry and very big gap emerges in terms of how that person delivers. So I agree that it should be further distilled, but it doesn't have to be at the constitutional level. The National Assembly should be able to refine that. Also, the president will have the prerogative, the incoming president, to decide to play it differently in how he presents to the National Assembly.
I think one of the things the bill has done is the fact that once you win election, you don't go and rest. You start working immediately, because if you are expected to submit this name in 2 months, it therefore means that the day you're returned, you start working on that. But going forward, State Assembly, do you think they want this autonomy? No, and I ask because they always go to the state government, cap in hand, and in some states, the State Assembly is almost like one of the agencies of the state government. It's not an independent body. And If we look at the autonomy that was given to local government and to what extent, so I'm wondering, is the State Assembly prepared for this autonomy, and is it really going to change things at that level?
Thank you for that question. I like it. First of all, I answer for them to say yes, they want it, because they are suffering from a dependency syndrome. That is why they are always going cap in hand. A dependency syndrome that is created. No, yes, because, you know, it's a situation they found themselves over time. How many years have we been in and out of democracy, and for the past 23 years block period, it has been like that. So that is why I use the psychological term of dependency syndrome. But if, as individuals, as a speaker of a state assembly, much as they wield that power, or they have that, we know that sometimes they are being picked by the governor, they would like to have the control to exercise it as they wish. And we still believe there are good people that want to deliver dividend of democracy within the state legislature. So this is a good one. Even if they don't want it, it's there. Then that will now show us whether or not they want it. But I think financial autonomy gives what? Independence. And with independence comes confidence and comes demonstration of capacity or otherwise. So that is a very important thing. And in line with the principle of devolution of powers and through federalism, which is one of the objectives, you know, of bringing about this particular amendment, it is good for democracy for us to see. But then that goes to the next question you asked. What happened to the local government autonomy? So what I also foresee is, much as it's a good provision, it is also going, the result will be a factor of the political will of the governors to ensure that is done. Because in terms, taking it from what you said about the local government, I don't foresee the governors wanting that financial autonomy, because one of the reasons why the governors of the states of the Federal Republic of Nigeria are amongst the most, if not the most powerful governors in the world, is because of the absolute power they wield at the state level with regards to the controls of those, you know, units of governance that they should have control for us to have that balance and that control. They probate and reprobate, and that they won't want to let go. But political will is what will drive that for us moving forward. So first of all, the superstructure and the structure, the framework must be right, and this provision, you know, that has been brought in the amendment is germane, is fantastic. What remains to be seen is execution, and how that execution will be enforced. I believe the political will of the incoming president will play a critical role for this to simmer down. Because interestingly, taking what's out of your words, so sorry, we go back to we go forward to the issue of the giving the powers to the state to generate, transmit, and distribute electricity, and all those provisions that are fantastic. But at execution level, like is the recurring common denominator issue that have bedeviled the progress of Nigeria, is at that state level how the players act. And that is why I keep on saying, much as we have issue with the presidents of Nigeria successively, the chunk of the blame of the bane of our democracy is actually not the president. I dare say it is those governors that have been shackling us back, because they have been given the money to execute. They have the levers of governance to deliver, but they have consistently, majority of them, failed, and with no consequences.
Interesting perspective there you're offering. Still staying with some of those far-reaching recommendations. You talked about power. Yeah. You talked about railway. So it is one thing to devolve this power, but the kind of investment that some of these infrastructures require, do you see that as something within the realms of some of this state government, laudable as the idea may be?
Oh, fantastic. Very well. That will bring about the capacity, the precipitate, the kind of quality of leaders we have at that level, which has been a critical failure factor in the general progressiveness of our national polity. The governors, most of them have not really, delivered, because either they have the capacity but they don't have the political will, or vice versa. A state of like Lagos, let's take Lagos as a model, for example, has demonstrated the ability and the capacity to do so. The current president-elect, the president-elect, Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu, ran his state for years without even the national subvention. A lot of the developmental, strides in Lagos were done and delivered using the PPP model, right? So it depends on the foresight, the vision, and the capacity of the governors. The opportunity has been given to them, and we are moving towards true federalism. If we go back to the First Republic, for example, the late sage Awolowo, Ahmadu Bello, and the likes of the governor of the Eastern region and all that, we are delivering dividends of democracy. We are driving the regions in line with their visions, and we could see we are still counting success of democracy, referring to projects that were done in the First Republic. So this is germane. The states will have capacity. After all, they are doing it by what? By busy collecting loans left, right, and center, rather than being innovative and creative to drive the state. So these are far-reaching, fantastic provisions, amendments of the Constitution. What remains to be seen is if the governors, in this case, will be able to seize the moment, if you like, and provide, development for their states in line with the peculiarities of the state. I expect the new set of governors, whether returning or new, to demonstrate the knowledge of the peculiarity of their states in terms of strengths and in terms of weaknesses, to see how they can harness those strengths to make the states better moving forward.
All right. Another alteration to the bill was the renaming of the Nigerian prison to the Correctional Service. I mean, before now, for over a year now, we've been referring to it as the Nigeria Correctional Service. But has there been any difference, or is this just the name?
I think if you ask me, this is one of those things you can call in administration corrective actions taken, or no, not corrective action, normalizing a situation or formalizing a situation, as the case may be. It's just, for me, semantics. It's just changing of name as far as I'm concerned, maybe to reflect or to change that perception, to manage our perceptions from that prison, quote and unquote, word to correctional facility, which is okay. I don't see any. We saw the provisions. I saw it. There is nothing that has to do with the mechanics of how that entity is driven or how it is run. It is even not going to change the size of the budget anyway.
One critical part I would like you to speak to before we bring this conversation to a halt is the place of active citizenry in all of the things that we aspire for. We've talked about how this would afford us the opportunity to see whether these governors understand the potentials that are inherent in these amendments. But also more critical, it's an active citizenry. What the average Arab, the average Westerner would not take sitting down. We sort of swallow, and if they push us back, we break the wall and continue to move back. At what point would we begin to see the kind of citizenry that would say, this is the provision of the Constitution, and we demand that you provide us this quality of leadership beyond just taking part in elections and afterwards going back to our business and returning another 4 years?
That's a tough one. Sunday and Stella, I'm sorry to sound very negative, but parochialism is deeply rooted in Nigeria. Parochialism along the line of ethnicity, religious sentiments, and a lot of factors that will continue to remain the dividing factors for Nigerians. You see, active citizenry, the impact of active citizenry is a function of how united the activism is. If the activism is not pointed, is not well articulated, is not sustained, it will end up like what I call the Andrew Liversole syndrome. So activism from the point of view of pressuring government to deliver in line with Constitution or in line with promise is a function of a united objective, united from with a view to pressuring. When you the models you are talking about, if you look at the demography of those entities, if you look at the cultural setup of those entities, they are different from ours. Nigeria is a complex society. So if, for example, we see it happening even in the case of fighting corruption. Somebody can steal from here to Jericho, from here to the end of time. The moment somebody wants to arrest an authority, people from that person's region, or people from that person's religion, or people from that person's state will come and carry placard and say, the person has done nothing, leave him alone. This is how bad parochialism is.
I keep wondering, is it a psychological problem?
It is a societal ill. The erosion of our value system. And then what complicates is this polarization along this line. But it is also talking about the corruption of our mind and the erosion of our value system. Because if you go back 150 years ago, you go to northern Nigeria, there are people of Igbo extraction that have been there, commingling, cohabiting, doing business peacefully, and vice versa. You go to Lagos, you go to Anambra, you go everywhere, right? And people are there. If you go to, I'm from Kano, they go to places like Sabongari and all that. And people have even assimilated from Sabongari to other parts of the town or the city, even within what you call the core of the city. You know, but you have places like Ongwondo Power and all that, which reflects that it is a settlement of people that came, you know, to stay there and to grow. You know, that over time changed with the emergence of colonialism, with the emergence of post-colonialism, of this political class using these levers. Why are they using it? Because the people have become sucked into that. You know, driven by religion, the bad side of the religion in terms of bad religious leaders, and also the political actors. But as individuals also, we have become that sentimental and is deeply rooted. So that is why the activism we are talking about may not play out that way. However, political consciousness, as we are evolving, may be the stabilizing factor to be able to push and pressure. But the advice to the people now is for us to be more tactical, you know, in driving this and ensuring we start making the baby steps to the big steps. What do I mean? At state level, I want to see that activism at state level. Now addressing these governance issues of governors sitting pretty and doing nothing for 8 years, and fingers are being pointed at the center because they have all it takes to deliver. So at state level, at least the parochialism is there, because if you look at some states, I don't want to mention states, it's deeply seated.
That's right.
You know, even when you say it is the zone of this, it is the time of this zone to bring a governor is an issue. You know, so but then it is easier to pressure the governors to deliver. And when governors deliver, as to my mind, about 50% of our developmental strides will be achieved.
Interesting perspective. We can sit here all day and talk about the Nigerian problem.
Yes.
And it will not be enough. But clearly, as articulated by our guests, we need a unity of purpose. We must upscale our thirst for national development above parochial interests. That's the summation of what Baba Yusuf has told us this morning. I want to thank you for always finding time to be with us. And we look forward to having you as often as possible continue to preach the Nigerian message. And hopefully Sunday we will look back and say, this was my contribution to nation building.
That's the whole idea, Sunday. And thank you very much for the platform, for the opportunity. Thank you, Stella. And thank you, viewers, for listening in.
That's right. Thank you, viewers, for listening in, for allowing us come to your living room free of charge. We hope we have brought value to you this morning. We charge you to go out, be the best you can, and contribute your own quota to make this country a better place. If you have missed out on any part of our show, you can recourse to our social media handle on YouTube and on the Facebook and catch up on all the interesting packages that were brought to you this morning. I am Sunday Michael Ogu. Let's do this again tomorrow.
Thank you so much for joining us this morning. And if you all listened to Yusuf, he talked about the fact that every citizen has a role to play in building this nation. With that, we've come to the end of the show. Join us same time, same station tomorrow. My name is Stella Iyaji. Do have a very pleasant day.